Volkswagen's finally trying to take on some of the luxury electric saloons on the market. Indeed, the ID.7 is pitted with the likes of the BMW i5 or even the Mercedes EQE. Now, at the time of filming and in the UK, it's available in the Pro Match configuration, which starts from roughly £51,500 without adding any additional options. There's also the Launch Edition model, which starts from roughly £55,500. And at a later date, you'll also get the Pro S and the GTX variant. Now, in this review, you can see how it compares with some of its competitors and fundamentally if it's actually worth its price tag. So let's kick things off and talk about its electric range. And here, the model that I'm sat in is the Pro Match, and it has a 77 kilowatt hour net or 82 kilowatt hour gross battery pack, and that gives it a WLTP claim of 384 miles. It's worth considering over here that the GTX model will have the same battery pack, at least that's what I've been told, and the Pro S model will actually have a larger battery pack, 86 kilowatt hour net or 91 kilowatt hour gross, and that model is supposedly going to get over 435 miles. It hasn't been homologated, so therefore no official figure was provided by the manufacturer. Now, apart from all of that, all the models will not come with a heat pump as standard, which I do think is quite disappointing given the overall price point of the ID.7 and if you look at some of its competitors. So yes, indeed, if you do want a heat pump, which for example has been fitted on this test vehicle, you'll have to splash out an additional £1,000. Now, in terms of the overall range that I attained from my mixed driving tests, it's at around 260 to 280 miles. Now, that's not too bad in the grand scheme of things, specifically given the fact that it is a larger all-electric saloon. But again, do consider this vehicle has got the heat pump that comes fitted, and if you do look at some of the smaller all-electric saloons, it doesn't quite compete. Indeed, over here it is beaten, for example, from the likes of the single-motor Polestar 2, the BYD Seal, and the Tesla Model 3. Another thing to consider, specifically if you look at some of its competitors, is that the ID.7 only has a singular regenerative braking mode. Indeed, you have no means of customizing it, like for example you'd find on the Hyundai Ioniq 6, or for example you don't have any sort of advanced systems like you'd find for example on the BMW i5, let alone the fact that you do not have actually a one-pedal driving mode. So right now I'm driving at 40 miles an hour and I'm on drive mode, and therefore if I release off the accelerator pedal, I'll continue rolling. However, if I flick up on the gear selector that's found behind the steering wheel and go onto B mode, the vehicle will start decelerating, which can be handy in certain scenarios, but it would have been great to see a further degree of options or customization like you'd find on some rival alternatives. Aside from recouping energy while on the move, you can of course plug it in, and here via CCS port it will take up to 175 kilowatts of input. However, on the Pro S model it will go up to 200 kilowatts, which is actually pretty impressive, therefore allowing both models to go from roughly 5 to 80% in a mere 28 minutes, of course if you do find an appropriate DC charge point. Now, all vehicles come fitted as standard with an 11 kilowatt onboard charger, therefore if you do have access to a 3-phase power supply, it'll allow you to recoup energy at a much more rapid rate via its Type 2 port. However, it's a shame that you do not have the option of adding a 22 kilowatt onboard charger, which would have further reduced that time. You have of course got the ability to plug it in via a regular 7 kilowatt wall box or indeed via a regular 3-pin socket, but do bear in mind that it will take a lot longer to achieve a full charge. So past all of that, what about when it comes to performance? Well, here the Pro Match model has got a motor planted on the rear axle only, and therefore giving it a rear-wheel drive configuration. Combined with its battery pack, it outputs 210 kilowatts of power or 282 horsepower and 545 newton meters of torque. I had it tested using RaceLogic's Performance Box Touch from 0 to 20 miles an hour in 1.72 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour in 2.57 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour in 5.86 seconds, which is actually a little bit faster than the manufacturer's claim, and 50 to 70 miles an hour in 2.95 seconds. I also recorded a peak acceleration of 0.54 Gs. Now, as for its top speed, it is capped at 112 miles an hour. Aside from its straight line speed, it is worth talking about its handling characteristics, and here it won't quite compete with sportier alternatives, for example the BMW i4 or the i5, which are really class leading in this department. But nonetheless, the ID.7 still does feel pretty engaging to drive around winding country routes, and that is in part thanks to the fact that you've got a rear-wheel drive configuration and a sport mode preset that you can select via the infotainment system, giving you a little bit of that heightened sense of feel via the steering wheel. Now you have got the ability to actually expand on this by adding the adaptive chassis control, or DCC for short. This is actually a pretty spenny option, and at the time of filming is only available within a pack which costs a whopping £3,270, although I've been told this will be reduced in terms of having it in a separate pack altogether. This will give you an even heightened sense of feel and provide you even more customization with the drivetrain. As for its suspension system, you've got a MacPherson setup at the front and a 5-link system at the rear. Combined with active damping, you do actually have a pleasurable driving experience when you're going to potter around town, and therefore it does soak up a lot of the anomalies, speed bumps and potholes. But yet again over here, it won't quite compete with some of the active air suspension systems like you'd find on some rival alternatives. Now another thing that aids when it comes to the overall driving experience is low cabin noise, and here the ID.7 does do actually a tremendous job, and that is in part thanks to the fact that you've got an acoustically treated windscreen. Now on the subject of audio, we do have to talk about its audio system, and here as standard you've got a 9-speaker setup. Thankfully you do actually have rear speakers, unlike what you'd find in the ID.3. If, however, you want an even better experience, you might want to consider the Harman Kardon audio upgrade. This will cost you an additional extra, but will give you 700 watts of total power output and a 13+1 audio setup, and that does include a subwoofer. So do consider that if you're a bit of an audiophile. Now as for the use of technology, you have got an ambient lighting system around the cabin, which is very much appreciated, with 30 colours to choose from. Now that's not exactly overly special, but the infotainment system has actually been completely redesigned, at least in comparison to some of the other ID vehicles that I've actually reviewed. Indeed over here it's very much more intuitive to use, with a dedicated climate control found towards the bottom, like you'd find for example on the likes of the BMW i5 or the i4. It just feels a lot more intuitive to use, and thanks to its actually larger screen size of 15-inch, it means that you've actually got plenty of information displayed for you. It's also very much responsive, and I've got no issues whatsoever when it comes to actually using it. Furthermore, it also integrates Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and you've also got turn-based navigation that feeds through to the instrument cluster and also the head-up display. Now speaking of which over here, the instrument cluster is actually a little bit different from what you'd find on other ID vehicles. You no longer have that small little 5.3-inch display behind the steering wheel. Instead you've got a very small kind of letterbox type of look that is found in where the regular instrument cluster would be found on ICE based vehicles. It's actually very nice and it's fully digital. It provides you all the key driving information that you'll require. But better still, you've also got a head-up display with augmented reality. Now this is actually really intuitive. Not only will it show you your driving speed and, for example, the safety systems that are in operation, but it will actually give you some visual cues. For example, if you're coming across a roundabout, or if you have your navigation set up, then it'll give you some sort of arrows pointing left or right. It's a small little inclusion by the manufacturer, but given it does actually come fitted as standard in the ID.7, it is very much appreciated and a little bit more of a unique selling point over some of its main competitors. Now while that's all very impressive, it does actually get a little bit better, and by that I mean when it comes to the overall storage. Within the cabin you have got the center console. At the top you have got a wireless charger that comes fitted as standard, and 2 USB Type-C ports, both of which deliver 45 watts of power and also allow you to connect up to the infotainment system. Further down the center console you've got 2 cup holders, and then you've also got a pretty large storage area within the armrest. You've also got a small little tray, for example, for your key fob. Then, underneath the center console, you've got an even larger open area, which can be handy, for example, for a small to medium-sized purse, or indeed a larger size wallet. Then you've also got the door bins, where at the front they're actually lined in fabric, and therefore will not only accommodate a 500ml bottle with ease, but also will prevent your keys or indeed any sort of loose change from rattling about. And then you've also got the rear door bins, which will also accommodate a relatively small bottle. And then you've got a pull-down armrest compartment for 2 extra cup holders. You then also have 2 USB Type-C ports that are found towards the rear portion of the center console, which also deliver 45 watts of power, making it very much ideal for your rear occupants. My only complaint, however, is the fact that the glove box has not been optimized for right-hand drive vehicles, which is quite a shame given the overall price point of the ID.7. Now, of course, when it comes to storage, we have to talk about its boot, and here you've got 532 litres to play around with, or a whopping 1,586 litres when you drop down the seat, which is actually really impressive. Now, I love the fact that you've got a hatchback design with an electric tailgate that comes fitted as standard, a completely flat floor with a 60/40 rear split folding seat with an integrated ski latch, and better still, you can even drop down the seats from the rear portion of the boot, making it quite accessible if you do this on a day-to-day basis. And you've also got a sizable underfloor compartment which will suffice for your charging cables. Now, the only downside is the fact that this vehicle, very much like other fully electric vehicles from the Volkswagen Group, does not feature a frunk, but given the amount of space you've got in the boot, it's a non-issue. Now, another selling point for the ID.7 is the sheer amount of space you've got at the back of the cabin. As someone who's just under 6 foot, I can almost fully stretch out my legs, which is really impressive to say the least. I also love the fact that the manufacturer has optimized the rear footwell design, meaning that not only can your rear occupants really stretch out their legs, but if you've got a rear middle occupant, they won't be left uncomfortable on those longer journeys. As for headroom, it's not too bad, specifically for an electric saloon. However, in comparison to, let's say, larger size SUVs, it won't quite compete. For example, let's say the ID.5, ID.4, or even the likes of the Skoda Enyaq iV, which are also offered from the Volkswagen Group. Now, what I really do love in the ID.7 is the fact that you've got these cushiony headrests, not only for the front occupants, but also for the rear. It means that you're going to have a really relaxing experience, even if you're sat at the back. Now, as for the front seats, they are electronically adjustable and also have got a massage function with an electric lumbar support, which is very much appreciated. And you've also got a heated steering wheel. If you do add the interior pack, not only does this add the Harman Kardon audio system, which I referenced before, but it also adds heated rear outer seats, a different material around when it comes to the upholstery, and also power and ventilated and memory front seats with an extra massage function, which does actually promote even better ergonomics. There is also the smart glass sunroof, which effectively integrates polymer dispersed liquid crystal materials and therefore turns your sunroof from clear to opaque within seconds. This is actually pretty neat. However, given the fact that it comes part of a £4,370 option, it does mean that it'll alienate quite a lot of consumers who simply just want some extra light within the cabin. This brings me on to its exterior design, and here it has got that elongated profile, sitting at 4,961 meters long and 2,141 millimeters wide, including its mirrors. Indeed, it is a pretty chunky vehicle. Despite that fact, it has actually got a pretty low drag coefficient of just 0.23, which is actually pretty impressive to say the least. Now, its looks are very much subjective, so I'd be curious to know what you make of it down in the comment section below, but here I do think it's pretty much in line with some of the other ID vehicles out there on the market. Now, as for the alloys, 19-inch ones come as standard. If, however, you want the 20-inch alloys, they'll set you back an additional £480. As for the colour of the vehicle, it comes in solid grey/black. If, however, you want a metallic or two-tone finish, it'll set you back an additional £745. Past its exterior design, let's talk about safety. And here it actually did tremendously well in Euro NCAP's test, scoring 5 out of 5 stars. If you actually look into the numbers, it actually scored 95% in its adult occupancy test, 88% in its child occupancy test, and 80% in its safety assist score, which is actually very impressive. Better still, you've got a plethora of driver assistance systems that come featured as standard. You have got adaptive cruise control, which actually does work a treat of keeping you at a safe distance from the leading vehicle and doesn't feel too jittery either. You've also got speed limiter, dynamic road sign recognition, front assist, lane keep assist and side assist with also assisted lane changing, exit warning system, traffic jam assist, emergency assist, driver attention system, and even Car2X. Now, while it's very much appreciated to see all of these included as standard across their trim range, I do feel that the dynamic road sign recognition is a little bit intrusive. Indeed, it'll constantly bing and bong at you if you go over the speed limit. Now, in case you're wondering if I was breaking in a law, far from it. In fact, I was just frequenting the country roads where the speed limit in the UK is at 60 miles an hour, at least on certain country roads, and therefore meant that the system was incorrectly peaking up the speed limit at 20 or 30 miles an hour, and therefore meant that the only way to disable it was to come to a complete standstill, disable the system by the infotainment system, and go about my day. Indeed, over here, the system comes included as standard every single time you power on the vehicle, so therefore can be quite cumbersome. Now, past my annoyances, I really do love the fact that the vehicle is very easy to maneuver. Despite its elongated profile, it's actually very easy to do a 3-point turn, and thanks to the fact that you've got 360-degree cameras as standard and front and rear parking sensors, it makes it a breeze when it comes to parking. Better still, you've also got rear cross traffic alerts to give you that extra peace of mind. So with all that in mind, it brings us on to our verdict. And quite frankly, the VW ID.7 really does deliver in terms of its promise, at least in comparison to some of the other vehicles from the Volkswagen Group. In that, it does provide you a more luxurious interior and an upgraded use of technology over the likes of the ID.3, ID.4 and ID.5, and also gives you plenty of legroom for your rear occupants and a humongous boot, all while still giving you good sort of driving dynamics and comfort and a decent electric range. The problem, however, is its overall asking price. Granted, it undercuts the likes of the BMW i5 and even the likes of the Mercedes EQE, but these two vehicles just feel a lot more premium. Now, if you do look elsewhere and look at some of the smaller all-electric saloons, it is actually a bit of a tough sell. For example, you have got the BYD Seal, the Polestar 2, the Tesla Model 3, both the newer and the older model. You've even got the BMW i4, which you can throw into the mix, and the Hyundai Ioniq 6. Now, we'd be curious to know which vehicle you would pick down the comment section below and what you make of the VW ID.7. Now, it goes without saying that if you have enjoyed this video, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves and goodbye.